Hey everyone. Okay, so yeah, obviously the first major thing to talk about with this chapter is we get a setup to a long anticipated fight for fans, which is Sanji stepping up to take on Kizaru. And I'll be honest, I was always one of those people who wasn't as over the top excited about this possibility as others were, but I also have to admit, knowing the mechanics at play and the kind of development Sanji went through of accepting his genetic enhancements and how he utilized them within his existing fighting style, I am definitely curious to see how a fight like this will play out. And even kind of taking the enhancements out of the equation, the more I thought about the possibility of this fight, the more I did come to the realization that Sanji is kind of the best person to take on Kizaru, as the one thing Sanji is known for out of all the Straw Hats is his sheer amount of endurance. Like, Sanji has always been known as the Straw Hat who can take a licking and keep on ticking. Like he's taken so there have been times where he's taken so much damage, and yet he's still managed to kind of still keep standing or still alive. Like it's and even though those things you could kind of directly relate to his enhancements, it's one of those things where it's when it comes to facing someone like Kizaru, it's one thing to match Kizaru in speed, but unless you have the endurance to take those hits as well, then it's not going to mean much. It's not going to mean much. All the way back on the archipelago, it kind of proved that fact. And now that Sanji's got both those necessary factors of both endurance and speed at his disposal, it's only a question now of whether those factors that make Sanji the fighter that he is are also developed enough to defeat Kizaru. And for the most part of my personal opinion, I'd say yes, but I think the other factor that will have a greater effect on the outcome of this fight is that Kizaru's been fighting a much more prolonged battle than he's probably used to this entire time. So I imagine to some degree that also gives Sanji a slight edge in the sense where, like, Kizaru's got to be wearing down to some degree, even if he's not showing it. So in that regard, I think Sanji might have an edge at defeating him. I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but it's a slight probability of it happening. And the reverse could also be said about Zoro's fight with Lucci. Like, it's clear Lucci is kind of. It's clear that Lucci has kind of. It's clear that Zoro has kind of let Lucci take control over the fight, and I'm sure Zoro might make it out of that fight alive, but it's like I think Zoro waited too long in order to really. I think Zoro kind of underestimated just how much stronger Lucci had gotten. Honestly, at that point, like it's a point of like Zoro maybe kind of underestimated. It's a weird moment where the first time I think Zoro might have underestimated his opponent. Like I think he saw Lucci as just an enemy they defeated, so it's going to be easy. But no, Lucci's has shown he's kind of gotten stronger. Honestly, though, I think my favorite part of this chapter is getting to see the Navy fleet continue to fall into shambles as they're fighting an uphill battle of fending off the giant warrior pirates and the rogue pacifists. Like, it's one of those things that regardless of how this whole arc ends, like, both sides are going to be left in shambles to some degree. And the icing on the cake, though, was definitely seeing Luffy double punch Jay Garcia. Although that in itself leads to something major we do need to talk about, which is after Jay Garcia gets punched out, we see Katarina Devon and Van Augur come in and confront Jay Garcia, where they declare that declare the reason that they kind of make their own little declaration of war to the world government, where they say the one thing the Blackbeard pirates want is the world, and when you combine that with Jay Garcia saying Teach's bloodline is special, yeah. I think it's kind of made the speculation of a connection to rocks, honestly, just all that much more, like, convincing. And this is just another notch in that belt to me that further reinforces the idea that there's some kind of genetic connection that Teach has to rocks. He's like he's probably like a descendant of some kind to Rocks. The only, which, if that is in fact the case, the only puzzling thing to me right now is what Blackbeard's aim exactly is when Augur says the Blackbeard pirates want the world. Because to me, the thing that's always been interesting about Teach is he's always, no matter what his actions are, he has always been kind of that dark mirror reflection of Luffy. Someone who goes about the idea of being a free pirate, a free man, exemplifying the ideas of freedom, but to a much darker and, say, direct degree by trampling, where unlike Luffy, who tries to build people, who believes in freedom and tries to build people up through that, Blackbeard believes in his own type of freedom by trampling on everyone else in the way. So, which, again, in itself has similarities, but still vast differences to Rocks. So if it's true that Rocks and Teach are of the same bloodline, that they're descendants of some kind, then the question is how much of Teach's actions are inspired by Rocks' legacy. Because so far it seems like Teach has taken, I guess, the core idea, but just much more methodical in his execution in regards to the idea. But even then, in regards to the idea, it feels like he's gone in a completely different direction from Rocks as well. So it's like, what exactly is... So when he says he wants the world, how does that translate into his actions? I guess his actions and where he's going with his motives, I guess, is my question about it. And yeah, let's talk about how the chapter ends with Caribou begging Katarina and Augur to become Teach's subordinate. And my thoughts on this man have always been well documented, so for me, if it's my only reaction to that is like, if it means seeing less of his stupid bitch ass, then I'm all for it. Like, I'm sorry, I know there's people that like this guy, but to me, I'm like, I could not care fucking less what happens to him, honestly. Circling back to the beginning of the chapter, though, seeing the giant warrior pirates again also makes me wonder how Oda's going to utilize the reunion between them and Usopp, because more than anything, he's the member of the Straw Hats both Dory, Brogy, Oimo, and Kashi respect the most, as much as he respects them. So for me, it's a question of how we'll see them work together off each other when we finally see them reunite, because I doubt Oda would set this up just to have the Giants take complete center stage while leaving Usopp on the sidelines. Like, there's got to be some way that we're going to see Usopp fight alongside them. Also, I didn't talk about this when they made their grand return alongside Shanks, but the fact that we are getting this reunion at all, to me, pretty much signals that we are getting closer to an Elbaf arc. Like, probably almost right after the events of Egghead, honestly, wrap up. But, like, maybe Oda will take a small detour, but when I look at the whole of everything, the whole of Egghead, Egghead's connection to even Elbaf, like, and even Vegapunk's connection to Elbaf, I think there's no better time to do Elbaf than after this arc, now that the Giants have re-entered the picture. And supposedly, according to Oda, if I remember correctly, he said that Elbaf is gonna be the arc that gives Usopp his own character arc, like what Whole Cake did for Sanji, which, if true, I'm all for. The only question I suppose from that is, I have with this idea is how Yasopp and Shanks will play a part in that as well, since Elbaf is seemingly affiliated with the Red Hair Pirates, so I doubt Oda's just gonna leave the Red Hair Pirates out of this. And even more so, how much more we'll learn about Loki, as there's still a mystery surrounding that guy as well. And like it's gonna be one of those things where Elbaf is gonna be a very interesting balancing act that'll be interesting to see Oda tackle at the end of the day. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Analyst Crunchyroll, be sure notification bell, hit the subscribe button, and just share the video around, guys. Dark Knight One, signing off. Later, everyone.